Happening. This is Jerry here at Wealth Dynamics. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hey, I want to give you guys a really quick introduction to our Friday night wealth creation course. Thank you for joining me. If you're on Facebook, Instagram, make sure you guys share the stream. We do these every single Friday night. And so the reason why I do this course is I want to help create financially educated and wealthy families all across the country, navigating their economic futures with certainty and helping build more prosperous communities around them. So think about that. Like if more people were financially educated, if more people were wealthy, if more people were navigating their economic futures with certainty, they knew where they were going, what would the environment look like? It would look a lot more prosperous. So we share these courses because I want to provide information that's applicable, it's simple, it helps, and it's stuff that's really not being talked about. Okay, so the last several months, we actually just got done with a segment about the sacred account life cycle, talking about from the very beginning of financial knowledge all the way through to saving, investing. How do you utilize the sacred account for all of those things? One of the questions I was asked is, how do you make large purchases with the sacred account? Okay, so we're going to talk about that tonight. Now, for those of you that don't know what the sacred account is, we're going to go over that tonight. It's a dividend-paying whole life insurance policy set up with a high early cash value. Yes, I said whole life insurance. Yes, Dave Ramsey just wet himself when I said that. That's okay. We're going to learn all about why this is actually a good thing to use, how you can design it properly and use that for large purchases. Now, when I say large purchases, I'm talking things that we buy that cost lots of money. Okay, so homes, right? Cars, vacations, education. What are some other large purchases, guys? Things that people spend money on that are abnormally expensive. Yeah. Vacations, we said homes, cars, college. What are some other ones?
Alaska snowmobiles.
Snow machines in Alaska. We don't call them mobiles, Mike. So snow machines, ATVs, RVs, all of the stuff ultimately people are gonna buy. So this is not a course on whether or not you should buy those things. This is, all right, if you're gonna do it, here's how to do it in a smart fashion, right? So really quick, as always, I want to cover some of the facts about this. Let me clear my screen up and get to the next page. I want to cover some of the facts on large purchases, all right? So check this out. When we look at large purchases, Americans will purchase a home on average every 13.3 years. Okay, so think about a home, right? What does a home cost, guys? What's normal? $500,000? That sound about right? Okay, $500,000 for a home. So every 13.3 years, an American is going to purchase, an Alaskan especially is going to purchase a $250,000 thing. Okay, every 13.3 years. Now on a home, you're not buying it for $250,000. Usually you're using down payment money, maybe 5%, 10%. That's still a lot of money, right? You're still looking at, on a $250,000 home, if you're doing 5% down, you're still going to drop, what is that, 12 grand-ish? Right, in order to purchase that home. So that's $12,000, right, every 13.3 years. An American will purchase a new car every 6 years. Okay, I feel like 6 years is a stretch. Anyone here owned a car for more than 6 years? I haven't. I was trade them in sooner than that. So every 6 years at least. What's on average for a new car? $3 to $5 grand to buy a car.
To buy it, like 30, 40K?
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're probably putting a down payment and financing it. So that probably is like 3 to 5 grand, right? So you're probably doing 3 to 5 grand here. Americans go on vacation on average once a year. What's normal to drop on a vacation?
2 grand.
2 grand easy? I feel like 2 grand's on the cheap.
Yeah, that's like food.
It's more like 5 grand.
You think 5 grand? I've heard it on like a family vacation. I've heard 10 grand is easy.
Oh yeah.
If you have kids, all of that stuff. 10 grand. If you guys are, by the way, if you guys are on Facebook, let us know in the comments if this sounds about right. 10 grand for a family vacation. If you've got kids, you really do it the right way. That's once a year. College tuition, Americans are spending on college tuition on average anywhere from $20,000 to $45,000. Okay. So we just looked at, this is probably like 12 to 25 grand for the house. The car is 3 to 5 grand. The vacation, that's probably going to be about 5 grand. These are happening on a regular basis. College is one time, you're ongoing with that. But the problem here is, guys, these are, again, the facts. The average American household has only $88.63 in liquid savings. So think about if I'm an American family, I've saved my 8 grand, my 9 grand, my 10 grand. Every 13 years, I'm depleting that. Okay, every 5 to 6 years, I'm depleting probably half of that. Every 1 year, I'm depleting probably half of that. Okay, you guys have seen that stat that Americans live paycheck to paycheck, 76% of us, right? This kind of makes sense if I'm looking at I'm paycheck to paycheck, because every time I build up money, it goes somewhere, right? So check this out. We have the American household only has 8,000 in liquid savings. Every 6 to 13 years, a major purchase wipes out the savings of the average American. They have to reset at ground zero. So think about this. If I wipe my savings out, I'm now down to zero or close to it. Who's ever done that before, by the way? You spend on something big and it basically pulls you back all the way down to where you started. Okay, it kind of sucks. Now it's kind of cool because you're like, hey, I just accomplished this big thing. I bought this thing that I saved up for. The downside is you're like, man, now I'm down to $100 again. Right? I think about I've done this on trips before. I've done this on business stuff before. I've done this on vehicles. I've done this on even paying off debt. Who's paid off debt where you got done paying off the debt, you didn't have money left over? I've done that. That wasn't very fun, right? But it's an accomplishment still. So if I wipe my savings out, though, think about this. I've not only got to start over, but I also lost out on the future earnings of that money. That's really what today is about. If I bought the house and I put the $12,000 down on the house, it's not even just about the fact that I'm out that $12,000. It's also about the fact that what if I had kept that $12,000? What if that $12,000 continued to grow? Right? So some of the stuff we're going to cover today, it's stuff that for me fundamentally changed the way that I thought about money. When I learned this data that I'm going to share with you tonight, it changed the way that I thought about money. I was never again able to just look at an expense and just see the expense. I was able to see a lot more than that. And this is how wealthy people think. This is one of the things that I feel like it's critical. It doesn't get shared enough. So I'm excited to share it with you tonight. But really understanding this mindset of money has future earnings. And if I can think about that before I get rid of the money, what's that going to do for me as a person? If I can start making decisions based on, all right, how much is this money worth in the future, not just today? Okay. Now, some of the myths, and tell me if you guys have heard this one. Living paycheck to paycheck is normal and everyone does it. This would be the myth on making big purchases and why it's okay. Do you guys, no one really says that. Do you guys see that general attitude though? Kind of the herd mentality, right? I'm paycheck to paycheck, you're paycheck to paycheck. It's normal, so what? Right? Another myth is I'll figure it out. Okay, I don't need to plan ahead for the purchase. I'll just figure it out when it happens. Okay, again, no one really says that. I've heard that maybe a couple of times, but you can see it in the way people operate with their finances. It's not strategic. It's not planning ahead. It's I'm going to make this purchase and then I'm going to figure out on the back end how to deal with it after the fact. Who's heard this? Just finance it. Right? That's common, right? So you've heard that myth. This is the polar opposite. So we've just financed it, and then we have fighting against the large purchase by just not making them. So who's seen somebody that their solution to this is just don't spend on big items? Don't buy a house, don't buy a car, don't go on a vacation, don't live life essentially, right? The next one, these purchases are assets and they're justified even if they wipe your savings out. This is where I was, and this is where a lot of America is. They have their 8 grand, their 10 grand that they've saved up. They blow it all on the house, but they're like, well, now I own a house, so I know I don't have the 8 grand, but I have the house, so I still have something, and it's an asset, so it's actually okay, and it's an exchange, right? Or they buy the car, they put 3,000 or 5,000 on the car, and they're like, yeah, I know I'm out the 3 to 5 grand, but now that's in the car's value, and at least I have a car now, and the car's an asset, and I still have my money there. It's just in the asset now. Right? That's how a lot of people think. That's maybe how you think. That's how I thought for a long time, again, till I started learning about some of this stuff. But the reality is these are myths. Now, the thing about myths is myths are usually not apparent. Right? Anyone in high school have to do the Bigfoot myth where you had to study about how there's all the Bigfoot stories come from every country in the world and you had to defend whether it was true or not? Did you guys have to do that ever? Okay. Jethro didn't. Jethro's like, where did you guys go to school? We went to school in Alaska, Jethro. So that was the thing. Now, the thing was that every country had a Bigfoot story. That was the argument, is if it's not a myth, then how come everyone came up with the same story? It's not like they all talked to each other, right? Now, whether Bigfoot's real or not, the reason it's a myth is because there's an element that could be true. It sounds like it could be true, right? So these things that you see here, I see here, I might look at this and I might actually think they're true. That's part of why they're a myth. A myth isn't a myth if it's not believable. So if it was just outright wrong, these wouldn't be called myths. They would be called false. They're myths because you could believe it. You could buy into this. This sounds maybe like it's kind of legit. Hey, everyone's paycheck to paycheck. That's all right. I'm going to be paycheck to paycheck too. It's not like anyone's doing better. Hey, I'll figure this out later. I'm busy. I have life going on. I don't need to worry about this right now. That's what financing is for, right? It could be very believable. I don't want to make a large purchase, so I'm just going to avoid it altogether. These are all things that you could easily buy into, and you don't find out they're a myth until it's too late. It's like walking on a frozen lake. In Alaska right now, the lakes are frozen. Are they iced up enough to drive on yet? No, it's been warm.
It's warm.
So they're frozen. It's going to look like you could walk on it, and you could maybe even try and drive on it, and you might even get out to the middle. That's the bad part. You might even get out to the middle. You might get all the way through this thing and then fall through the ice and find out that it wasn't good. So you don't want to buy into a myth just because it feels true, just because of who you heard it from. You've always got to go back and inspect the data. Is this factually true? Where did I get this from? Who is telling it to me? Are they winning the way that I want to? And if they're not, I need to really consider this might be a myth. All right. Now, here are some of the facts. I'm going to get some water really quick. So the truth on some of these matters. So the paycheck to paycheck thing. Paycheck to paycheck, right? Paycheck to paycheck, everyone is. I might as well be too. The fact is 76% of America is paycheck to paycheck. All right. So that means that 24% of America is not paycheck to paycheck. So when we say this is normal and everyone does it, we can't use the word everyone. That's not true. We need to look at the facts. 76% are, 24% aren't. That's not everyone. That's a quarter of the population that is not paycheck to paycheck. Okay, so Jethro, I have a really hard question for you. Between that group that's paycheck to paycheck and that group that's not, which one would you rather be in? The group that's not, right? So you have to look at, well, what does this group do? So for me to just go into apathy, which is what that is, and if I'm just going to say, I'm going to keep being paycheck to paycheck because everybody is, therefore I'm going to continue making these large purchases, I'm neglecting the fact that a quarter of the population does it differently. They do it where they're not paycheck to paycheck. Okay, so I don't want to be in the normal group. I want to be in that group. Normal is never good, guys. Like normal means the average of what everyone else is doing. Now, the way that you get normal is paycheck to paycheck means that some of these people are literally like right up to the cusp of Friday. Some of these people, they ran out of money last Monday. Right? So there's two different degrees of paycheck to paycheck. There's really close in making it, and then there's like Friday happened, by Monday you were broke, and that's also paycheck to paycheck. You don't want to be there. You want to be here. I want to be here, right? I want to be 24% of people that's not paycheck to paycheck. That's a decision, by the way. The next myth, the truth to the I figure it out myth, I'll figure it out later. I will figure it out as a form of procrastination, okay? So you will figure it out, but check this out. If I figure it out, it's at the cost of my future. Think about it. If I'm always procrastinating, pushing something down the road, eventually that something becomes an emergency. Okay, has anyone ever learned about like the quadrant of urgencies, like the urgent, importance, not urgent, not important, that whole thing? Okay, so there's a quadrant that you look at and you gauge, okay, if something is not urgent and not important, I don't need to spend any time on it. Okay, if it's urgent but not important, that means it's somebody else's emergency. I don't need to spend any time on it. Okay, if it's urgent and important, that means it's my emergency. It's going to accumulate a lot of my time and attention. If it's important but not urgent, it means I'm handling it before it became an emergency. That's where I want to spend my time, right? So check this out. If I'm looking at procrastination, I'm taking something that's important but not yet urgent, and I'm pushing it down the road until it becomes urgent. Now it's important and it's urgent. It's going to take all of my time. Therefore, I can never handle my future because I'm always handling emergencies. I'm always kicking the can down the road. So this says here, You can't build a future if you're always figuring out new problems in the present because you didn't figure those problems out in your past. By saying, hey, I'll figure this out later, I'll plan ahead later, means that later is going to show up. Now you're going to have the emergency you should have handled 6 years ago when you bought the car the first time, that you should have planned for after you bought the car. Now it's been 6 years and you're going to go deplete your savings to go buy that car again. And then it's going to happen. It's a vicious cycle. It'll continue to happen to me. Okay. So that's a total myth. And that's the way we bust that myth. The Just Finance It. The average American pays almost $300,000 in interest in their lifetime as it is. 300,000. And again, average means that some people are way below that. Some people are way above that. So if I am paying $300,000 in interest already, do I really want to add to that? Probably not. Like that's interest that I'm paying, not earning. So if I'm just like, yeah, just finance it, take care of it that way, I'm adding to this number. It's going to continue to grow, which means that I am somebody else's asset. Okay, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about debt. We talked about if you're in debt, you belong to someone else. You are their asset. So if I continue becoming someone else's asset, I'm never going to become my own asset because my money goes to their interest rather than accumulating my own interest. Right? Saying don't purchase something because of money. And this is the one that a lot of people can fall into, is just don't buy it, live below your means, don't splurge. This by definition is living under the restriction of money, okay, which is the opposite of financial freedom. Financial freedom means to me that you live unrestricted by money. You do not consider, can I afford this? Can I do this? Can I go there? Can I help these people because of finances? That doesn't play into it. Okay, so you have to ask yourself, am I trying to be financially free or am I trying to be a financial slave? If I'm trying to be financially free, then I'm not going to restrict myself mentally by saying, don't purchase because of money. Okay, instead, I'm going to figure out, how can I purchase it? How can I make this thing work? Because that's part of having money is using it. Okay, it's got no value till I use it. So if I don't use it, then I'm never going to enjoy life. I'm never going to be financially free. Why would I get all of this money and then not use it? Even if it's mediocre amounts of money, I should be using it to figure out how I can get more. But if I just go don't, can't, won't, then I'm never going to make that progress to financial freedom. And then finally is that these purchases are not actually financially justified to wipe out your savings. Okay, they don't cash flow and they don't go up in value. Does a car pay you every month? Nope, unless you put it on Turo, but we're talking under normal circumstances, a car won't pay you every month. Does your house pay you every month? It doesn't. Your vacation, it doesn't pay you either. Your college education in today's world, 50% of the time also doesn't pay you. Okay, so you got to look at, if this doesn't pay me, then it's not an asset, which means that if I spent money on it, it doesn't mean I shouldn't spend money on it, by the way. If I'm going to, I'm going to, but if I did, I shouldn't justify it by saying it's an asset. It's not, it's just an expense. I just lost my money. Okay, so I have to really confront things the way that they are rather than the way I want them to be. Now, what's the problem here? Okay, the problem here is that these purchases, although they are necessary, they keep us from getting ahead. Okay, who can agree with that? If I have $8,000 and I go $6,000 in the hole on a car every 6 years, that keeps me from getting ahead. Right? Or every 13 years, I've got to drop anywhere from 12,000 to 25,000. Mike, we had this conversation with a client, right? We told him to rent. We were like, bro, like you could put 10 grand on this house right now, or you could rent, keep the 10 grand and go make money with it, which we're going to help him do. Right? So you got to really look at, again, there are two sides. Yes, I want the house. Yes, I want the car. I'm not a house guy. I'm a car guy. You can ask Lexi. Okay. And the funny thing is I know nothing about cars. I just know how they look. I'm like, that looks sick. I don't know what brand that is. I don't know what make or model, but I want one. The problem I run into is people that are car people. I'll start talking to them and they think I know about cars. So they'll, yeah, you know, and I'm like, no, I don't know any of that. I just know it looks nice. I don't know what's under the hood of my Beamer. I don't know any of the equipment in it. All I know is it's cool, goes fast. I like it and it looks nice. Okay. But the purchases, although they are nice, although we do want them, although sometimes we do need them, the second half of the equation is they're big and they set us back. And if they're big and they set us back, we can't not take that into the equation. We do need to consider that. Okay. So check this out. You save money up. This is the cycle. You save money up. You make the purchase. You have no money left, like we talked about. And you must take steps backwards on your saving or restart completely. And then you lose the future value of the money that you kept. If you would have kept it, you would have made more money with it, but you lose that possibility now that the money's gone. Okay, most people don't think about that part. Okay, Mike, before you started working here, did you think really about that part when you spent money? Like, hey, this could have been this much money down the road.
Well, I mean, opportunity costs.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about that, but I knew before I had to do it that
Yeah.
I was like, I already chose that I'm going to pay off the debt or do whatever.
Where did you learn opportunity cost?
I think it was just like I studied it in some point in time prior, but it was like self-study.
Yeah, no one taught you that though.
No, my family never taught me that. It was just like, if I don't use this for this, it was like, go out to drink or save money, type of thing.
Yeah.
And that's what it was.
And that's like something as kids, I think that we all learned, right? When you would have that little bit of money as a kid and there was no such thing as bills. You really could spend if you had allowance. Anyone else in the room get allowance when you were little? Okay. So you get the money and you have the choice of I could go buy toys and candy and no one's going to stop me, or I could save it up. I was always the kid that bought toys and candy. My brother, Alex, he would save it up every time. I hated that. I was like, Alex, why do you always have to be smart with your money? Let's go buy toys and candy. Right. So that was something as a kid, though. I can remember that decision. Do I keep it? Do I get rid of it? They do that test with, I think it was marshmallows, where they give kids marshmallows and they see who eats it versus who saves it for later. Yeah. Right. So there's a small degree of that. Now, the big thing that adults don't think about a lot of times is we don't think about, what if this was invested? Okay, what if this money was growing for me? It's one thing to just have it gone. It's another thing to have that money growing. And so when I think about that, that's a totally different equation. So the solution here is that I can't just simply not buy the things. Okay, a lot of people will wrongly make it the fault of the things. Oh, you wouldn't be there if you just never bought a house. Or you wouldn't be there if you weren't driving that fancy vehicle. Or you wouldn't be there if you didn't go on that vacation. The truth is somebody owns the house and they're fine. Somebody owns that car, they're also fine. Somebody also went on vacation and they're fine. So it's not the fault of the object. Okay, we can't blame the object. Whether you make the purchase or not doesn't matter. Okay, what matters is this: where do I keep my money? Where do I keep my money? This is one of the differences between the wealthy and those who don't have wealth. Where do I keep my money? Jethro, can you remember back when you were growing up, where were you told to keep your money at?
Piggy bank.
Piggy bank? What about you, Mike?
I mean, like my saved money or just money in general?
Your saved money.
I mean, it was just a savings account.
So a bank account. Lexi, how about you?
Just bank account.
Bank account. I was told a bank account too. Notice all of us said bank. Piggy bank, bank account, bank account, bank account. Okay, we were taught to keep our money in the bank. Okay, so we keep our money in the bank. Where does the bank keep their money? Do they keep it in the bank? No, they don't keep it in the bank. So the solution is, where do we keep our money at? We have to change the location. Okay, because people do buy these things. Like we looked at, 24% of America is not paycheck to paycheck. They're still buying these things. So it's not never buy the things. It's what are they doing with their money? Where do they keep it? So check this out. The other thing we got to look at, the solution here is time value of money, future value versus present value. Okay, who's familiar with future value and present value? Mike? Okay, Lexi, you're familiar with that? Okay, Jethro, is this something we've dove into? Yeah, inflation, growth potential, right? All of these factors. So we're going to go over this tonight. Future value versus present value. This calculation, by the way, this is probably the most used calculator I have on my phone. My calculator is the most used app on my phone. I'm always on that thing. Okay, but I'm always doing future value and present value calculations. What is this worth in the future? What is it worth today? Okay, that's how I make my decisions. What is this worth in the future? What is it worth today? So here's the solution. If I can keep earning on the money, even though I withdrew it and spent it, I can have the item and have the value of that money. I'm going to say that again. If I can keep earning on the money, even though I withdrew the money and spent it, I can have the item and I can have the value of the money. Mike, did I say I can have the money or I can have the value of the money? The value. Why do you think I said the value instead of actually having the money?
Well, because the money is going to go. The money itself is going to have there's no value in money. It's the value of
the money. It's exchange value. Yeah. And the other factor here is if I did withdraw the money and use it, the money did go somewhere. Like like if I can't make money turn into $2 by duplicating it, right? I can multiply it, but I can't duplicate it. So if the money is over here and I withdraw it and it keeps going, it can't be here and here. So it's either the value of it is over here while the actual dollar is over here, or vice versa. Okay, so that's the solution. Is I'm looking at how can I keep earning on the money even though I withdrew it and spent it and have the item at the same time and the value of the money. So who has heard that phrase? It's not about what you make, it's what you keep. Okay, we've all heard that. Okay, I added to that phrase, it's not about what you keep, it's about where you keep it. You see, I can keep money all day, but the problem is if I keep it, eventually it's either going to go down in value because of inflation, or I'm going to use it. It's going to go to the house, the car, the trip, whatever it might go to. That money is not going to be there. So I have to do something with it. And the best thing to do with it is to put it in a location where it's always going to grow no matter what. Okay, check this out. You guys we're all familiar with Apple, obviously. Do you guys know how Apple's business works with their monetary flow? Have you guys ever seen the breakdown? So this is pretty crazy. I saw this a couple weeks back. So we'll whiteboard this. So we have Apple. So they make money in the United States, right? So they sell a bunch of phones in the US. Now, Apple in the US brought in revenue, right? Apple in the US didn't keep any of the revenue. Apple is actually a franchise. Their franchisor is outside the US. Okay, so they make the money, but after they pay their employees' wages, sorry, US, all of our money had to go back to our franchisor. Right, so they have franchises set up. Now, I think their main one is in like Ireland or something like that. It's in the UK somewhere. And so the money flows here. It goes over here into the franchise. And when they need to do stuff in the US, they don't want to bring the money to the US because it's taxable. So what do? They borrow against the value of that money. They borrow it against it. So they still have all this money. They borrow against it and deploy the borrowed money in the US. That can't be taxed either. Okay, and this is a very elaborate scheme they've put together to the point where they have, I think it's several $100 billion just in cash right now, sitting there on the sidelines. They're never going to use it. They're never going to put it into a country because they don't want it to be taxed, right? And so they're just going to keep that growing there, and then they're going to continue to borrow against it at 1% and 2% and 3% to go do stuff that makes them infinite returns. Meanwhile, all of their money can keep growing because it never left the location. This is what banks do, guys. When you give money to a bank, we might as well just change the titles. Okay, so you give money to a bank, and the bank is going to do this. We'll just change the titles up. We have you give money to the bank. The bank then loans your money out, so you have deposits over here. They loan your money out, and then they pay you interest. Same cycle. The money goes here, it goes here, it goes here, it gets borrowed and loaned out and invested, and then they pay you an interest. They're borrowing from you, and they're avoiding a lot of taxes on it. You're actually paying tax on your interest. I think it's if you make more than $10 a year in interest, you're going to pay taxes on it. Okay, so you have to really look at the solution and how other people are doing it. So again, it's not about what you keep, it's about where you keep it. We can look at banks, we can look at corporations like Apple, and that's where they're keeping their money, is they're making sure it's not just going in a bank. They're thinking about how can I keep constant control and growth over that money. All right, so here's an example. I want to break the numbers down on this. So you buy a $200,000 to $300,000 house, right? Now I just went easy on the math. I said, all right, what about, let's say that's a $9,000 down payment. Okay, so you buy a $200,000 to $300,000 house, you put $9,000 down. Okay, so if I put my $9,000 down, that means that I took my $9,000 out of savings and I spent my $9,000 on the house. My $9,000 is gone. I don't get that money back. It went into the house. If it appreciates, cool, but I'm not going to see that for 30 years, right? So I have $9,000 gone in the house. I can't earn anything on it either because it's $0 now. And in 30 years, let's say that I would have kept that 9,000 if I didn't buy the house. In 30 years, if I'm earning a 1% rate of return, my 9,000 would have been 12,000. Okay, not a lot of money, but you can see the growth, right? Who here would maybe still buy the house if you were between the 9,000 on the house or the 12,000 in 30 years? Jethro, you might? Mike? Lexi?
Not on 1%.
Not on 1%. So maybe not, but we're saying we're kind of unanimous. 1% doesn't sound great, right? What about 4%? Okay, if you didn't buy the house and you kept your 9,000 at 4%, your 9,000 would have been 29,000. Who thinks that's more attractive? Okay, now we're like, dang, I could have had 30 grand liquid to actually do something with, not adding to it. We're just saying your 30 grand by itself would have grown or your 9 grand by itself would have grown to 30,000, right? Or if I'm at 6%, 30 years from now, my 9,000 would have been 55,000. Who would take the 55,000 over the house? Okay, I would, because I'm looking at that and I'm like, man, what could I do with $55,000? And imagine if I kept saving. This is the thing that's unspoken for on the numbers, is the motivation factor. When I see it hitting those numbers, I'm probably going to want to put more money in. It's going to grow sooner and quicker. It's like working out. Anyone that's ever worked out that sees progress, it makes you want to do it more, right? Okay, same thing with saving and investing. When you see the numbers compound and you actually like, dang, you start doing it more. Versus if you don't see the progress, you're not incentivized to do much. So I'm looking at this number and I'm looking at own a house or a 54 grand. A lot of people don't think about it that way. Okay, and the reason why is a lot of people don't know where to put their money to do that. And sure, you can stake it in the stock market. Okay, guy in the back that's like, oh, you put it in a mutual fund, 87%. Sure, you can do that, but it's not guaranteed. It's up and down. Yeah, you can go talk to Vanguard and you can go get a 9% annual average mutual fund, but you're also going to have the years where you do negative 30, right? So I'm talking about Americans don't know where to get 6% every year, not up and down every year. See, if you knew this, then this would be real. And then you would maybe make that consideration of, hey, should I buy the house or should I put my money here instead? Okay, now I would say we still haven't solved the problem because we're talking in either or. Right, we said how to make large purchases, not how to stop making large purchases and put them in a high yield account instead. So how do we do both of these things? That's the question, because ideally, if I want a house, I'm going to get a house. I want the house and I want this. Not either or. Have you guys heard that phrase, you can't have your cake and eat it too? Mike, have you heard that, Jethro? No, it's a terrible phrase. Has anyone ever thought when you heard that phrase, Jethro, you just heard me say it, did you think, why would you make a cake if you weren't going to eat it?
But that's sad.
I mean, that's a sad thing. Why, Jethro is a chef. Like when you make something, you kind of want to enjoy it, right? Yeah, so the first time I ever heard that, my mom told it to me. She's like, Jerry, you can't have your cake and eat it too. And I was like, why would I make cake if I was never going to eat the cake? Like I want to have the cake and I want to eat the cake. And I want to do both at the same time. So this is the you can't have your cake and eat it too. This example is showing you can have the house or you can have the money, right? And a lot of us are saying we would choose the money. I know some people, though, that they wouldn't. They would choose the house. For them, it's more important. They want that for their family and the stability and all of the reasons they want the house. So a lot of Americans do choose the house. They don't choose this, right? So let's look at the 3 things we need to consider, right? The big 3. The 3 things we need to consider is present value. Okay, what is my money currently worth? That's present value, right? So a present valuation calculator would show you what is my money currently worth. You can look at that as like just the flat out, if I had 9 grand in the bank, my money is worth 9 grand. Or let's say you did have like a future income stream. You could figure out what's the total value of that future income stream today. That's another present value calculation. For those of you guys that are nerds, I want to show you the calculator that I use. And I think I can actually share this. Is there a way, Lexi, where if I pull my phone up on the thing here, that you could actually make my phone screen on the TV?
I think so. I think if it lets you share it from your phone, does it give you an option?
Yeah, let me see if it'll screen here. So I'm going to see if I can show you guys my present value calculator, because that's going to give you a lot of reality on this.
Oh, you can do AirPlay.
Do I need Bluetooth on for that?
I don't think so.
Mike, do you want to come take a look at this? Mike's our tech guy. So I've got the, is it screen mirror?
Yeah. And once it comes up as office, you should be able to
pull it up. And for those of you guys that are watching, this is Mike. But for those of you guys that are watching the calculator, it's called Power One FE. And I don't think it's going to pull up here. But if you download, it's a calculator called Power One FE. That Power One calculator, it has a present value calculator inside of it. And I use that all the time. So when I don't do a lot of equity real estate deals. I do a lot of private lending deals. When I do those private lending deals, I'm always looking at my present value calculator, right? So if I have my money today, what is it worth right now? That's present value. Future value is what is my present money worth in the future? Right. This is now looking at, like Jethro had mentioned, if you just have it in a bank, then you're really just looking at inflation. Right. If my money's just in the bank, what is it going to be in the future? Man, I really wish I had this calculator pulled up. Let me see if I have one here on my phone really quick, or on my iPad really quick. With this calculator, you can actually look at with inflation, if you didn't grow your money, where is it going to be in the future? And here's a calculator. That's not it though. And so you can see the money going down in value over time. Power One, here we go. Yeah. Oh, there's our AirPlay code, just in case anyone wants to get on our thing. Is that yours, Mike? Yeah. Okay, sweet. So Mike pulled his up. So check this out. So we have present value. I don't think you actually have it, Mike. Time value of money, you do have it. Okay, so check this out. Present value would be the present value of my money. So if I have, let's say, $10,000 and I have that today, and it is, let's say inflation is -4% a year. Compounds a year, 1 periods a year, 12, and then how many periods am I doing? Let's say that I do that for 30 years, 360 periods. What is my money going to be worth in the future? So my 10,000 is only going to be worth $3,000. Isn't that crazy? So that's present value versus, if I had a positive 4%, let's say that this wasn't negative, it was positive, and I have this for 30 years. What is that worth in the future? That's 33,000 in the future, right? So that's a present value calculator. Thanks for doing that, Mike. That's a present value calculator, and that's going to help you see like some of the stuff we're talking about. So again, that calculator is called Power One FE, and I use that literally multiple times a day. So we have present value, we have future value, and then we have interest. What am I earning versus what am I paying? These are the three factors you need to look at. Okay, what is my money worth today? What is it worth in the future based on if I'm earning interest or paying the interest? If I'm earning the interest, here's what it's going to be worth to me in the future. If I'm paying the interest, here's what it's going to be worth to me in the future. Now, this is something you need to consider. The wealthy buy homes, they buy cars, they buy vacations, they buy education, and they make large purchases too. This is the way they think. Okay, this is the reason why they can buy these things and they don't go broke when they buy them. They're aware of the present value of their money. They're aware of the future value, what their earning potential is, what they're going to pay in interest or make in interest, and they calculate that on almost every transaction. Okay, one of my mentors, he uses his present value calculator on literally everything. We could be eating lunch, and it's like lunch is $20. Stick it in the calculator. What's it worth in the future? Jerry, you got to buy lunch, man. Because he's like, man, that could be worth this much money to me, right? Now, how do we do this correctly? If we're trying to buy our item, our large item, let's say it's a house, we're trying to buy that. How do we do it correctly? Number one, don't save in the bank. Okay. Instead of saving in my bank, I want to become my own bank. Okay. And I'm going to use life insurance to do that. Properly structured, by the way, for this plan. Stop saving your money in the bank. The bank is not paying you high interest. They're not there to help you. They're literally there to loan your money out and make money on your money. Like if banks were there to help you, why do you think they're always in court? Okay, why do you think they're always charging us fees? Wells Fargo, how are they still even open? Like, do you guys wonder that? Like, we bank there because it's the only national bank we have really in Alaska. But every time I walk in there, I'm like, geez, how I sit down with the banker and the entire time in my head, I'm like, how do you work here? Like, how can you support the company after you know they just stole millions of dollars from Americans in fees for accounts they had no permission to open up? Right? If I did that, I would go to prison. If I opened up a sacred account in Jethro's name and didn't tell him about it and made him pay for it with his own money and he didn't know about it, he wouldn't be here right now. I would be in prison. I wouldn't be here right now. So don't save your money in the bank. Instead, become your own bank. Now, step number 2, properly fund your bank. Okay, you have to stop looking at this as I'm a consumer and I'm saving and trying to own things and have things. Like, yes, that's part of it, but I have to look at myself as an organization. If I am a bank, my bank needs capital. Okay, because I'm no longer trying to buy things, I'm trying to acquire things. The difference between buying something and acquiring it, buying and acquire can infer that I'm actually going to make profit on this. It's a transaction where I'm going to make money versus buying it. I can buy whatever. It doesn't mean I'm going to make anything. So I'm trying to acquire assets that make me money. Okay, so a business needs capital to succeed. Properly fund your bank. So when you think of saving money, instead of thinking saving, I want you to literally think like you're funding your bank right now. Okay, you need startup capital. You're going to provide that startup capital in the form of saving, which is what we do, right? Step number 3, do not be afraid to use the money, but understand the plan when you do. Banks want you to use money. Have you guys seen in Europe right now, a couple of the banks, they're paying negative interest rates? So that means they're paying the borrower. They're actually going to give the borrower money to borrow because they want the money deployed at work, right? They're trying to get that growing. Now, you're not going to pay negative interest rates to somebody to borrow your own money, but I'm saying you shouldn't be afraid to use the money. If you understand the system of your bank, you should know when to use it, when not to use it, and it should be very clear to you when to go for it. Okay, has anyone ever had that with money where you've been like unsure? Because you were unsure, you didn't make a move right or left, you kind of just stayed there a little bit like, what do I do with this? Where do I go? You don't want to have that with your own bank. You should always know this is profitable or this is not. If it's not, I don't do this. If it is, then I go for it, right? And then next, 4th, is you always pay your bank back. So Lexi, if you take a car loan out, what happens if you don't pay the car loan? Repo happens, right? So you need to have the same attitude with your own bank. The bank treats you that way because they know that the system doesn't work if you don't pay them back principal and interest. So when you take money out of your bank to make your purchase, you need to have the mindset that that is your bank. You funded your bank with your capital and you have to pay your bank back. If I pull the $9,000 out, it means that I pay the $9,000 back to myself with principal and interest, right? This gives you the opportunity to continue to make money on your capital, and then you've got more money to reinvest. So there's no such thing as free money. This goes back to present value. Your money is not free. It will always cost you, and it will either cost you present value or it will cost you future value. I'm going to give you some examples of each of those, but your money is never free. It will always cost you present value or future value. Mike, if I leave my money in a savings account, is that costing me present value or future value? Actually, that's kind of true. A little bit of both, right? Okay, but if I pull it out and I spend it, what's that costing me? Present value or future value?
I mean, present value because it's gone.
Okay, but it's future value because I can't have it again.
Yeah, it's gone forever.
Right? So you got to look at, like, some of these circumstances are going to be both. Some of these are going to be either or. So here's the example. Here's how we're going to do this. Okay, this is the method we're going to take to do this. You are going to save into your life insurance policy. We call this the sacred account. The reason we call it the sacred account is it's sacred. You're going to treat it like it's sacred. You only use it for profitable transactions. So save money into your life insurance policy. By the way, that's called your sacred account. For our example with the house, accumulate $9,000 into your sacred account that is earning dividends. Historically, the minimum guarantee is 4%. They've been closer to 6 to 8. So you know that that's the range your dividends are going to be in. So get your $9,000 saved up in your sacred account. Borrow your $9,000 against your sacred account. You're going to pay 5 to 6% interest historically to borrow, right? Now, those of you that are hearing borrow, red lights going off. I don't want to borrow. I don't want to borrow. We just looked at with Apple. Who thinks with Apple borrowing, that's probably a good idea? Okay, so that's proof that there's different borrowing than what you've been conditioned and I've been conditioned with. I was taught borrowing is bad. I was taught when you borrow, you're losing. In this case, when you're borrowing from yourself against yourself to make money for yourself. Just like Apple. Yeah, you're going to pay some interest, but you're avoiding a lot of other things and earning elsewhere. It's a profitable transaction. So it doesn't matter if we're paying a little bit of interest. Borrow your $9,000 against your sacred account. You will pay 5 to 6% interest to do that. Buy your house and then pay yourself back with principal and interest. Which means when I borrow, I'm determining what's my loan term on the $9,000 that I pulled from my sacred account. How am I paying that back over how many months and what rate am I charging myself to do that? I'm going to charge myself more than it costs. If it costs me 5, I'm going to probably charge myself 6. By the way, I'm still earning my dividends too. But again, there's no such thing as free money. So I could just borrow and never pay it back, but I've now costed myself the future value of that money. I'm not in it for the present value. I'm in it for the future value. I'm thinking about what is this building for my future, right? So pay yourself back with interest. And then by the end of this, check this out. Your 9,000 will grow to 30 to 50,000, depending on if you were a 4% or a 6% or an 8%. Let's say it's 8% and or let's say it's 6% and you're at 50 grand. You have 50 grand and you have a paid off house. We just talked about have your cake and eat it too. I just showed you how to do that. Because you used your life insurance, because your life insurance kept earning dividends, because you paid yourself back and that money kept growing, in 30 years, you will still have your house. It will be paid off. And that 9,000 you used kept growing the entire time. It's now worth 50 grand. So between having the 50 grand or having the house or having both, who in the room picks both? I pick both. Okay. Now check this out. You don't know how to do this because it was never shared with you. I didn't know how to do this until someone showed it to me. I didn't think it existed. I thought this was a scam. When I first saw this, I was like, this is a scam. It's the devil. Never put money into it. It's the worst thing in the world. Okay. Who's seen Waterboy?
Yeah.
Bobby Boucher. But mama. So I thought it was the worst thing in the world. And then I finally looked at it and I was like, all right, this actually makes sense. And then I started seeing who else uses it. Do you know what I found? I found out that Bank of America has $20 billion in their balance sheet inside of this. You're depositing your money to Bank of America. I'm depositing my money to Bank of America. For me, it's Wells Fargo. We don't have a Bank of America up here. They're putting my money in this. There's no coincidence there. Okay, because they understand that if this thing can make it to where they still grow their money because they're borrowing against it like Apple is doing, they can have the future value and the present value at the same time. Instead of losing both or having one or the other, they're going to have both at the same time. All right, so what actually happened here? You funded your life insurance policy. Every dollar you put in, you're able to borrow 70 to 95% against the value of that dollar immediately. So I put in $100. I'm able to take out $75 to $90. Right, against that $100 or $95. This means that it will take you longer to save because you're getting you're not able to pull. So we talked about present value, right? It will take you a little longer to save, or you're going to need to put more money in sooner to get there. Okay, that's called present value cost. I can't have as much of my money in the present, but I'm going to have more money in the future. So I'm thinking long-term mindset. I'm funding a bank. I'm not trying to have 100% of my money today. I'm trying to have something in the future that's going to build forever. Right? If I told you you were going to set up a business that after 3 to 5 years and it broke even, it was guaranteed to make money forever, no matter what, who would invest in that business? I would, right? So that's what this is. You're not going to have immediate liquidity. You will have to save, and it's going to either mean you put more money in to get to the target in the same time frame, or the time frame gets extended. This is called future value. You're focusing on future value. Okay, so you do this, your life insurance policy, it earned a 4 to 8% dividend. We just broke that down. You borrowed against the life insurance policy. You paid the company 5 to 6%, which means that depending on what you earned and what you paid, it either costed you money to borrow, or it was a break even, or it was profitable, depending on how much you earned and how much you costed. So that's, again, I've got to be aware, future value, present value, what am I earning, what am I making? I don't borrow just for anything. It's got to be the right circumstances, right? And then lastly, you paid yourself back with principal and interest. You realized you were the bank and you paid yourself back. You're going to have to, if this was a car payment, You pay cash for a car. Every 6 years, you're going to need to buy one. That means that you better just pay yourself for the car now. Because in 6 years, you're going to need one anyways. You're going to need that money there. So does this really work? Let's check this out. Let's ask that question. Let's be skeptical for a second. You can save money at the bank and you can have more money available now, but less money available later. Who would say that's a true statement? Okay, that's focusing on present value. Okay, so that's present value. Or you could save more, you could save money in your life insurance. You can have less money now, but more money later. Who would say that's a statement that's true as well? Okay, that's future value. So you got to ask yourself, do I want more money today at the cost of my money tomorrow, or do I want more money tomorrow at the cost of my money today? The latter is called investing. The first one is called consuming. Am I a consumer or am I an investor? That's the difference there. Okay, so I can withdraw from the bank. Check this out. This is the other half. I can withdraw from the bank and pay no interest, but also get no growth. Who agrees with that? If I withdraw my money from the bank, I don't get any interest, but I also don't get growth. True or false? True. Okay, so that's again present value. Or I can withdraw, I can borrow against my life insurance and pay interest, but continue to get growth. Is that true or false? Okay, that's future value. Again, present value typically is not going to be profitable. That's a consumer mindset. Future value is an investor mindset. I know my money's going to grow in the future. I'm willing to give up some liquidity. I'm willing to deploy it and put it off and have it doing stuff for me, even though I can't have all of it, because I know the future value of my money, right? And this, again, it's based on certainty. I've got to know with certainty that I'm going to get that growth. With life insurance, I know I am, because they've done it for 151 years in a row. Okay, it's guaranteed to happen. So it's going to be there. So it's not a question of, did I put it in my Vanguard fund and Donald over at Vanguard on the 1-800 line had to tell me my account went down by 30%. That's not a scenario here. It's the same thing every single year. Okay, so here's another one. True or false? You can buy a house and you cannot pay yourself back. Easy to do, right? That's called present value. I'm going to have the house now. I'm going to have the gratitude now, but I'm not going to pay myself back. Okay. The other factor is you can buy a house and pay yourself back with interest. That's going to cost me money today, but I'm focusing on future value. Again, it's a binary mindset here. I can have my money. I can have my money at the expense of having money tomorrow. So I can have my money today at the expense of having my money tomorrow, or I can have my money tomorrow at the expense of having it today. Okay. So real banks are willing to pay you for your money so they can invest it for their future values. They're not making money on your money today. They're making money on money tomorrow. They're betting on future value. They know that they're going to take your money from you. They're going to have to pay you for it. They're going to give you interest. They might have no money come back. They might owe you, but they bank on the future value of your money. So my argument tonight is, why don't we start banking on our own future value? Instead of giving it to an institution where they're banking on it, why don't we start banking on it for ourselves? I know it's going to grow. I know how to grow it. If I put it here, it's going to happen. Banks are putting it here anyways. So if I give it to them, they're already going to do this. Why don't I bypass them and do it for myself? Okay, so what do you need to know about this? If you're going to deploy this strategy. So this strategy only works with whole life insurance. It does not work with indexed universal life insurance. It does not work with variable life insurance. You only do this with whole life insurance, no other kind. This only works with a mutual company, no other kind. A mutual company, who knows what that is? Anybody? So a mutual company, I'll break this down. A mutual company means the company treats their policyholder like a shareholder. Okay, so it only works with a mutual company, no other kind. That's why they pay dividends, by the way. So if I own a Sacred account, they're going to pay me a dividend because I'm a policyholder. My policy represents equity shares in the insurance company. They're paying me a dividend because I'm an owner. Okay, it's not like a bank where I'm not actually an owner and they're just paying me to use my money. They treat me like an owner, right? Very different mindset. This works most ideal with high early cash value structuring. So those of you that have seen life insurance where you've got no money in it for the first 5 years, that was the wrong policy. That was done incorrectly. Okay, so this is high early cash value. This works most ideal with companies who have paid dividends for over 100 years straight. If I'm banking on this strategy, I want to know they've paid. I want to know in 1929 when the market crashed, they didn't. I want to know in the Great Depression, they were still profitable. right? And then finally, this is ideal if done with cash flowing assets and with an LLC. The reason why you want an LLC is if you do it through an LLC with your borrowing, you're able to make your interest paid to the insurance company tax deductible, whereby as an individual, you're not allowed to. Okay, and that doesn't mean that the company needs to own your life insurance. It means that when the money comes out of the life insurance, it gets loaned to an LLC. And you charge the LLC interest that you're paying to the insurance company. That way you can write it off. That's how you spin that. So check it out. This is, again, night and day difference on making large purchases. This is without the sacred account. This is with it. I like pictures and visuals. I'm going to give this to you really quick. Without the sacred account, you save money at the bank. You withdraw the money with no accountability. You stop earning interest on the money, and then you make your purchase and have none of your original money left, and you lose out on the future value of that money. You got the present value, but the future value is gone. With the sacred account, you save money in the sacred account, not the bank. You withdraw your money at a rate of 5% interest. Mike, true or false? If you got to pay 5%, are you going to hold yourself more accountable than if you don't?
Yeah.
You're going to think about the transaction. Okay, that's called behavioral finance. That's a good thing. Step 3, you keep earning dividends instead of stop the earning because you pulled the money out. Number 4, you make your purchase. You have all of your original money still working for you. You get the present value and the future value. You have had your cake and you ate the cake too. Good for you. You were able to experience the point of having cake. Now, last page I want to cover is action steps. So step number 1, start your sacred accounts. This doesn't happen if you don't have a bank. If you don't have your own banking system, I'm not saying you have to have a bank account. I'm saying you have your own bank. You are the bank. The sacred account allows you to be the bank. Get your blueprint is step number 2. Okay, the blueprint is actually something we do for our clients for free. It's a financial plan we build. Okay, we build it out. We show you, here's your numbers. Here's where you're at. Here's where you want to be. These are the steps. Here's how we're going to incorporate the sacred account to make the steps happen. Step number 3, decide what your next large purchase will be. Number 4, determine how much that will cost. Number 5, fund your sacred account to that amount. Number 6, take out a loan. Number 7, implement the strategy. Pay yourself back with principal and interest. That's how you do this, guys. Now, really quick, what I want to do is just open this up for questions. So do we have anything in the studio or on Facebook or on Zoom or Instagram or anything like that?
No questions on
Nothing
Facebook.
on Zoom.
Okay, cool. What about Instagram?
Check.
We got any in the studio here tonight?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yeah.
When you're talking about paying back yourself, you're like, who sets the interest rate? Is that you as a policyholder, or is that something that is set by somebody else?
So you would
kind of threw out that, if you set 5%, then maybe you should do 6.
Yeah, so you have kind of 2 interest rates. The policy has its own interest rate that the insurance company charges for you to borrow against the policy. You as the policy holder, you would charge yourself interest on how much you have to pay back. So you would just basically make that number up. And I would look at it from a profitability standpoint. I'm gonna charge myself more than the insurance company does because it pushes more money back to my bank.
But then wouldn't that just go towards your MEC line or the MEC limit?
No, so it'll go towards policy loan repayment.
Okay.
Yeah, so you pay your policy loan back. And what that does is it actually reduces the amount that the insurance company can pay or can charge you because you're paying your principal down sooner. So they're charging simple interest calculated off your outstanding balance. So if we shrink the outstanding balance, then they're charging a smaller dollar amount of interest, even though it's the same rate, it's off a lower balance. Does that make sense? Yeah. So basically it widens our profit margin between dividend earned and interest paid by making that happen.
I guess going back into kind of what Jethro was asking about, when someone borrows from a sacred account, could you go explain how the simple interest works, where as long as you pay it off within 12 months versus if you didn't, 2 different scenarios?
Yeah. So the simple versus compounding, basically. Yeah. So yeah, simple interest essentially is looking at on the sacred account, they're going to charge you, let's say, just to make math easy, let's say you pulled out 10 grand at a 5% rate. It's simple interest. So at the end of the year, you would owe them $500, right? And that's with compounding different. That's like with a credit card. Every month, the interest is being calculated against the balance. With the sacred account, that's not the case. So if you took out a $10,000 loan on a credit card and you didn't pay the credit card back, you're going to have to pay a lot more than $500, and you're going to have to pay it that month.
Yeah.
Right. And it's going to continue to stack and grow on your balance. So the sacred account, it does not compound on the balance. You pay them the $500 at the end of the year, you're good. You pay off early, you only have to pay what you actually left the loan out for. Okay. Now, where it does compound is if you left it outstanding the next year. So if it was $500 and I didn't pay it, then next year I would owe the 500 plus if I still left it outstanding, it would be another 500. Now I owe 1,000.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not really compounding. It's just adding. So simple interest, it's literally addition. You're adding the interest, compounding, you're multiplying against the balance, and it continues to revolve that way. And one trick, and this is getting into a different topic, but we talked again, future value, present value, knowing what you're earning and what you're paying. A lot of credit card companies, they'll set their minimum payment to where it's less than the interest charged. That's why if you just pay the minimums, the balance keeps growing because you're paying less than the interest charged. So you're looking at this as an investor and you're saying, well, I don't want to pay a bunch of interest. I do want to be profitable. I'm going to set it to where I'm paying more than I'm charged. And that way I'm always making progress and I'm always making profit on that. Mike?
Got a good question from Justin Rathburn. Can I change the terms of the policy after I have it in effect to save more in the sacred account at any time to accelerate my borrowing power?
Justin, that's an excellent question. So with us, you can. When you set up your policy, it's going to depend on what company you're going to go with. So when we work with clients, I'm going to actually sit down and we're going to go through the client with a questionnaire and go on just, in the future, do you plan on putting more money into it? What's the maximum you plan on doing? What's the minimum? That's going to help us select the company. We are independent, so we're going to shop companies. Guardian is an example of a company where they will let you put in up to 10 times of what your base starting contribution was. But once you pass that, they won't let you restructure it. So if you're like, all right, I know it's between this range, I'm going to stick with Guardian. Mass Mutual, they're going to require like a higher contribution. You can't do that flexibility on putting in more that year, but you can alter the policy anytime you want to. So it's kind of a trade-off, and we kind of walk through that with you. So the short answer is yes, you can restructure. You can make it to where you can put in more money. You can also make it to where you put in less money. If you're trying to maximize borrowing power, you would ideally increase the size of the policy to fund more into it. And then we would work with you in tandem to make that happen. So I hope that answers your question, Justin. Any other questions?
I think we're good.
Awesome. So guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate you all. Have a great night. If you have questions on this, reach out to me, hit us up in the DM comments. You can also go to sacredaccount.com. I want to encourage you, if you enjoyed our course, go to our Google page, give us a 5-star review. Thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys next time.